If you were born between 1965 and 1980, you're Gen X like me. In fact, I was born right smack dab in the middle of Gen X. And since today's video is Gen X themed, I figured I'd break out the most Gen X t-shirt I had in my closet, which is U2 Joshua Tree. Brings back good memories of music back in the 80s and early 90s. For Gen X, 2026 isn't just another year on the calendar. It really feels like a countdown clock. The first Gen Xers are turning 60 this year, and many Gen Xers don't feel prepared for retirement. And I get that comment a lot in the comments of my videos, that people feel like they're not ready and they haven't saved enough. And my goal for this video is to encourage those folks that it's not too late, and that 2026 can be a critical year to get back on track with your retirement planning. And I'm going to lay out some key action steps that you can take this year to get back on track. So if you're Gen X and you feel like you're behind, stick around and I'll explain. I'm Michael, and this is Betirement. For Gen X, many of us got behind early in our career, and there's some good reasons for that, which I'll explain later. But I recently read a survey that shared some startling statistics about Gen X and where we stand in terms of readiness for retirement. The survey said that 8 in 10 Gen Xers are worried about their money, and on average have $711,000 saved. And honestly, that's a lot of money. But the same people surveyed believe they need over $1 million, between 1.1 and 1.2 million. And a lot of advice these days start to suggest that you need 2 million. So obviously that's daunting to think about how to recover that gap. Hundreds of thousands of dollars that might be a gap in what you have versus what you need. So now, as we enter 2026, many Gen Xers are starting to wake up and realize that we need to do something now to get back on track. Now, this gap in our retirement savings didn't happen because we were lazy or we didn't care. We were really the guinea pig generation that represented a shift in the retirement system. Previous generations, many of our parents had company pensions, and they could count on working for 20 or 30 years for an employer and then be taken care of by that employer. Many of those were defined benefit pensions, which meant if you worked for 30 years for the company, you would get so many thousands of dollars per month to live on. That was easy. It didn't require thoughts, and it didn't require discipline other than sticking with that job and staying at that employer. You didn't need the discipline to take on the responsibility for retirement savings yourself. But that all changed when the 401k was introduced, which coincided really with Gen X and when we were entering the workforce. And when the 401k system was new, it didn't have the features that it does now. Many employers now have auto enrollment, so you don't even need to think about enrolling in your 401k. New employees are automatically enrolled. And things like auto escalation of contributions, where you might start with a 5% contribution and every year it automatically increases by 1%. Those are really helpful and really take away the need to think and make those decisions for yourself. You can set it and forget it and slowly increase your contributions year after year. And those early 401ks that many of us had early in our career had limited investment choices and maybe didn't set us up so well for success. On top of this, Gen X got squeezed from seemingly every possible direction. Many of us came out of school with high student loans, and we entered the job market either just before or during the dot-com crash. And then we went through the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, and then we were hit recently with the pandemic bear market. All those challenges really set Gen X behind in our retirement savings. Since the pandemic, we've seen dramatically increased cost of living, making it even harder for us to save and plan for retirement. It's costing us more to raise our kids, to send our kids to college, and many of us are supporting our aging parents. These increased costs really explain why nearly 25% of Gen X have tapped in to borrow money from our 401ks to cover our high expenses. Now, these facts and statistics are sobering, but I want to encourage you all that there's hope for Gen X, every single one of us. And we might be inclined to quote our favorite philosopher of the 1980s and 1990s, Michael Stipe, when he said, "It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine." I think the key point there is it's not the end of the world, but it might be the end of the world as we know it, meaning we need to make some key changes in order to prepare for retirement. And that survey I mentioned earlier shows that Gen X is taking action to make these changes. It showed that 40% of Gen X has already cut their discretionary spending. and 34% has already increased the amount that they're saving into their retirement accounts. 23% has already met with a financial planner to help make sure that they get on track for their retirement. These aren't big flashy moves, but put together, it's a good sign that Gen X has started to take action to get on a good trajectory towards retirement. So think of 2026 as the year to stop saying, I'll fix it someday, and to start saying, I'll use every possible tool to get my retirement savings back on track. This doesn't need to be overwhelming. I'm going to share 4 practical tips to help get your retirement planning back on track. The first is to max out every dollar in your retirement savings limits. And if you're 50 or older, there's even higher contribution limits that you should take advantage of. And treat these contributions like a non-negotiable bill, just like a mortgage payment or a car payment where you would strive to never miss a payment. The second key point is to avoid lifestyle creep. I've talked about that in past videos. For many of us, our home and our car is our largest expenses, and we can easily get out of control with those 2 big ticket items. So maybe it's time to consider selling your car and buying a cheaper used car that still meets your needs but helps you save additional money. It's important to avoid trying to keep up with the Joneses, and maybe that means not driving flashy cars or moving into a bigger and flashier home, because those big expenses really impact how much we have to save for retirement. And at some point, maybe it's time to downsize your home. Maybe after the kids are out, maybe you don't need that home, and that frees up some capital that you can apply towards your retirement savings. The third is to get serious about financial planning, and you might be able to do that yourself, and a tool I use is called Bolden. You can enter all your key account information and your expected expenses in retirement, and it can forecast out, do you have enough, or how much more do you need to save before you're ready to retire? If you're not comfortable doing that yourself, you might want to sit down with a financial advisor to help make sure you have a good plan in place. The fourth key tip is to stop raiding your 401k. I mentioned that a lot of Gen X are dipping into our 401k, taking out loans or early withdrawals to cover expenses. And of course, that just puts us further behind. So really, it's important that your budget's set up such that even if you have an unexpected expense, you can cover it without dipping into your 401k. Because there's still time for every single member of Gen X to close any gap that may exist in retirement savings and move on to a wonderful and enjoyable retirement. And remember, feeling behind is normal, but staying behind is a choice. And 2026 offers a great opportunity for anybody that feels behind to adjust course. Yes, Gen X is worried, and nearly 80% of Gen X doesn't feel like they have enough saved for retirement. But there's still plenty of reason for hope. And a key source of that optimism is that most of us in Gen X are in our late 40s and throughout our 50s. And that means that most of us are in our prime earning years and are probably earning more in our jobs than we ever had before. And that provides an opportunity to get back on track with our savings. So if you're Gen X and you're feeling like you're still behind and want some more actionable tips, check out my other videos. I retired last year at the age of 51, and I started this channel to share some of my tips for success and things that I did, and also some mistakes that I made that you could learn from. I'm Michael, this is Betirement, and I think 2026 should be a year of optimism for every member of Gen X. I want to encourage all of you to keep walking, keep learning, and keep building a future that you want to retire into.